She was shaking so badly that she couldn't hold the microphone steady. 20,000 people stared back at her from the audience, their faces blurred by the stage lights. Emma Rodriguez had exactly 3 minutes to deliver the speech that would either save her company or destroy her career forever. But here's the thing nobody knew. Just 18 months earlier, the same woman couldn't even order pizza over the phone without having a panic attack. The timer started counting down. 3 minutes. 2 minutes, 59 seconds. Emma took a breath that would change everything. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back to where it all began, to the moment Emma almost threw away the most important discovery of her life. Emma Rodriguez worked at TechFlow Solutions in Austin, Texas. 28 years old, brilliant software engineer, and completely invisible. While her colleagues pitched ideas in meetings, Emma sat quietly in the back, her notebook filled with concepts that could revolutionize the tech industry. But those ideas never left that notebook. Her manager, David Chun, had pulled her aside one afternoon and said something that would echo in her mind for months. Emma, you're incredibly talented, but talent without voice is just potential that dies in silence. He wasn't trying to be cruel. He was trying to wake her up. But Emma heard it as another confirmation of what she already believed about herself, that she wasn't meant to be heard. 3 promotions had passed her by in 2 years. Not because she wasn't qualified. She was the most qualified person in the room every single time. But every time an opportunity arose, someone else spoke up first. Someone else took the spotlight. Someone else got noticed. Her best friend, Sarah Williams, would say to her during their weekly coffee meetings, "Em, you have solutions to problems that don't even exist yet. But solutions that stay locked in your head help nobody." Sarah was right, and Emma knew it, but knowing and doing are 2 very different things. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in March that started like any other day. Emma had been working on something extraordinary for 6 months, an algorithm that could predict and prevent software failures before they happened. This wasn't just another improvement. This was revolutionary. Her algorithm could reduce system crashes by 73% and save companies millions in lost revenue. She had scheduled a presentation for 10 a.m. to show her work to the leadership team. Emma had practiced that presentation 47 times. She knew every slide, every transition, every possible question they might ask. Her data was flawless. Her conclusions were groundbreaking, and her solution was exactly what the tech industry needed. But as Emma walked toward the conference room that morning, something familiar started happening. Her hands began to shake. Her breathing became shallow and rapid. The walls seemed to close in around her as she approached that glass door where her colleagues were already gathering. Standing outside the conference room, Emma could see CEO Jennifer Mitchell taking her seat at the head of the table. This was her moment. 6 months of work, countless late nights, and a discovery that could change everything. It all came down to the next 30 minutes. And then Emma did something she had done countless times before. She turned around and walked away. Instead of presenting her life's work, Emma sent an email to her colleague Marcus Thompson. "Hey, Marcus, I'm not feeling well today. Could you present my algorithm project? You're much better at this than I am." She attached her presentation and hit send, essentially giving away 6 months of her life in a single click. 20 minutes later, Emma watched on her laptop screen as Marcus stood in front of the same executives she had been too scared to face. She watched him present her work, her discovery, her revolutionary algorithm as if it were his own contribution to the company. When CEO Jennifer Mitchell called the presentation absolutely groundbreaking and exactly the innovation TechFlow needs to dominate the market, Emma felt something break inside her chest. It wasn't just disappointment or regret. It was the sound of her dreams shattering. That evening, Emma sat alone in her apartment with her cat Whiskers, staring at a reflection in her laptop screen. She opened a new document and began typing. "Dear David, I am writing to inform you that I will be resigning from my position at TechFlow Solutions effective immediately." But as she typed those words, something Sarah had said during their last conversation replayed in her mind. "Emma, the world has enough people who gave up on themselves. What it desperately needs are people who fight for their voice, even when that voice shakes with fear." Emma deleted the resignation letter and opened the voice memo app on her phone instead. She pressed record and said, My name is Emma Rodriguez, and I have been silent for too long. Today, I gave away the most important work of my career because I was too scared to speak up. But that changes now. She played the recording back and heard something she had never heard before, her own voice speaking truth without apology. It was shaky and imperfect, but it was real, and for the first time in years, Emma didn't delete it. The next morning, Emma arrived at work an hour early. She walked straight to David's office and knocked on his door. When he looked up, surprised to see her there so early, Emma said, "I need 5 minutes of your time. Yesterday's presentation was my work, and I need to tell you what really happened." David listened as Emma explained everything, the algorithm, the fear, the email to Marcus, and the decision she had made the night before to stop running from her own voice. When she finished, David was quiet for a long moment. "Emma," he finally said, "what you're describing happens to more people than you realize. But the fact that you're here, telling me this story, tells me something important about who you really are." David made a decision that would change everything. He scheduled another presentation for the following week, but this time, Emma would present her work herself. No colleagues, no safety nets, just Emma and her revolutionary discovery. The week that followed was the longest of Emma's life. Every morning, she practiced her presentation in front of her bathroom mirror. Every evening, she recorded herself speaking and listened back, forcing herself to hear her own voice until it stopped sounding foreign. Sarah became Emma's unofficial coach, meeting with her every day after work. "The algorithm is brilliant, but that's not what this is really about. This is about you deciding that your voice matters as much as anyone else's in that room." The day of the presentation arrived. Emma's hands were still shaking as she walked toward the conference room, but this time she didn't turn around. She opened that glass door and stepped inside. CEO Jennifer Mitchell was there again, along with the entire executive team. Emma set up her laptop, looked out at the faces staring back at her, and began to speak. "Good morning. My name is Emma Rodriguez, and I want to show you something that could change how we think about software reliability forever." Her voice was shaky at first, but as she moved through her slides, something remarkable happened. Emma's passion for her work began to overpower her fear of speaking. She explained her algorithm not as someone asking for approval, but as someone who knew she had found something extraordinary. When she finished, the room was silent. Emma's heart pounded as she waited for anyone, to respond. Then Jennifer Mitchell began to clap. Slowly, the rest of the room joined in. "Emma," Jennifer said, "this is exactly the kind of innovation that will define TechFlow's future. But I have a question. Why didn't you present this yourself the first time?" Emma could have made excuses or deflected the question. Instead, she told the truth. "Because I was afraid. I've spent my entire career believing that my ideas weren't worth hearing, that my voice didn't matter. But I realized that staying silent doesn't protect me from failure. It guarantees it." That presentation led to Emma's promotion to Senior Innovation Lead. But more importantly, it led to something she never expected. Other employees began reaching out to her. Engineers, developers, and designers who had their own brilliant ideas, but lacked the confidence to share them. Emma realized she had stumbled onto something bigger than her algorithm. She had discovered that the tech industry was full of brilliant minds who were being held back by the same fear that had paralyzed her for years. She started hosting monthly voice labs at TechFlow, sessions where employees could practice presenting their ideas in a safe environment. What began as a small group of 5 nervous engineers grew into a company-wide movement. But Emma's biggest moment was yet to come. 6 months after her breakthrough presentation, she received an invitation that would test everything she had learned about finding her voice. TechCon, the largest technology conference in North America, wanted her to deliver the opening keynote speech. 20,000 attendees, live-streamed to millions more around the world, 45 minutes to talk about innovation in the tech industry. Emma's first instinct was to decline. The old Emma would have recommended someone else, someone more experienced, someone who deserved to be on that stage. But the new Emma, the one who had learned that her voice mattered, accepted the invitation. Preparing for TechCon was different from anything Emma had done before. This wasn't about presenting data to colleagues. This was about inspiring an industry. She spent weeks crafting her message, but the core remained simple. Innovation dies in silence, and the world needs every voice to be heard. The night before the conference, Emma stood in her hotel room, looking out at the city lights of San Francisco. Sarah had flown in to support her and was sitting on the bed, watching Emma pace nervously. "You know what the crazy part is?" Emma said, "I'm not scared of failing anymore. I'm scared of not trying, of going back to being that person who watched from the sidelines while other people changed the world." The morning of the keynote, Emma walked onto that massive stage at TechCon. 20,000 faces looked back at her from the audience. Millions more watched online, and for a moment, she felt that familiar fear trying to take control. But instead of running, Emma thought about every brilliant idea that had died in silence, every innovator who had given up because they didn't believe their voice mattered. She thought about the young engineers in her voice labs who were just discovering their own power to speak up. Emma stepped up to the microphone and began to speak. "My name is Emma Rodriguez, and 18 months ago, I was too afraid to order pizza over the phone. Today, I'm standing here because I learned something that changed everything. Your voice doesn't have to be perfect to be powerful. It just has to be yours." For the next 45 minutes, Emma shared her story, her algorithm, and her message about the importance of speaking up in a world that desperately needs innovation. She talked about the cost of silence, not just individuals, but to entire industries that miss out on breakthrough ideas because brilliant minds don't believe their voices matter. When she finished, the entire auditorium erupted in a standing ovation that lasted for 3 full minutes. But that wasn't the real measure of Emma's success. In the weeks following TechCon, Emma received thousands of emails from engineers, developers, and innovators around the world. They shared their own stories of staying silent, of brilliant ideas that never saw daylight, of careers spent watching from the sidelines. But more importantly, they shared stories of change. People who had watched Emma's keynote and decided to speak up in their next meeting. Teams who had implemented their own voice labs. Companies that had created new programs to ensure that quieter voices were heard and valued. Emma's algorithm did eventually revolutionize software reliability, being adopted by tech companies around the world. But her real innovation wasn't technological, it was cultural. She had proven that finding your voice isn't just about personal success. It's about creating space for others to find theirs too. Today, Emma Rodriguez is the Chief Innovation Officer at TechFlow Solutions. She still gets nervous before big presentations, but she never lets that fear stop her from speaking up. The Voice Labs program she started has been implemented in over 200 companies worldwide. But perhaps most importantly, Emma learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's speaking up despite the fear, knowing that your voice, however shaky it might be, has the power to change everything. The woman who once couldn't order pizza over the phone had become the voice that inspired an entire industry to listen differently. And it all started with a simple decision to stop letting fear write the story of her life. Emma's message to anyone watching this right now is simple. You have something important to say. The world is waiting to hear it. And your voice, exactly as it is right now, is enough to change everything.